thank you for giving me the platform. I'm always grateful to be able to, share anything with anybody who cares to listen. But my name is Hailey Hester, and I've been bodybuilding for, I think, 6 years now. I started when I was 16, and I'm 22 now. But yeah, I got started into fitness at a pretty young age. I mean, weightlifting really as a really little kid. But now I've been competing at the national level for a couple years now, and I'm a law student, and I live in South Florida. And those are about the two only interesting things about me. But I stay pretty busy with that.
I can imagine. I mean, most people would have a lot less going on outside of, being a law student and find a reason to not do something. Is it kind of in your nature to just want to see like what you're capable of in that way?
100%. I really started to realize how much I like to push the limits with myself almost in this past year, because I'm a very self-aware person. I'm always like, I'm very introspective. I'm always asking myself like, oh, I wonder like what are all the things that have gotten me kind of to where I am, with my mindset and with my goals and the things that I want. And reflecting a lot on when I was a kid, I just always had this tenacity and desire to like, I always wanted to be the best. From when I was a kid, I started out in sports. I did gymnastics and competitive cheer and school cheer all throughout school, all the way up until I was like 17. And at that time, that and fitness were like, the things that I was so passionate about. And I would look up to girls who, social media and cheer, it was kind of ramping up. It was at the beginning of when Instagram had only been around for like maybe 2 or 3 years. But some of these girls who were like top cheerleaders for competition cheer, they were making a really big platform for themselves, and they were the best in the world. And I was just looking up to them like, I want to be like them. So I just had this drive to like, I was like, I'm going to do as many tumbling practices as I can during the week. I want to grind. I want to wake up early. I want to go to the gym. Like, I want to watch what I eat. And that started at a really young age. I was only like 14 at the time. But that drive kind of stuck with me up until now. And it's not like I even, accomplished anything so crazy like in cheerleading. Like, I was just on like a regular small competition team in South Mississippi where I'm from. But those desires and like that push for myself, those are things that have stuck with me, to where I am now. It really gave me such a foundation of like, this is what happens if you really put your time into something and you believe in yourself and you work really hard. I mean, I remember the first time I got my back handspring, which was like not even that big of a deal, but I'd been working on it for like a year and a half. And it got to the point where I remember sitting like in my dad's truck and I was like, I've been doing this forever. I was like, and I still haven't gotten it, and I'm over it. Like, I kind of met that breaking point that I feel like everybody does when they're working for a goal. And my dad was like, just keep your head down, keep doing what you're doing, just keep going and you'll get it. And I really thought in that moment, there's no way I'm going to get it. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. If I don't get it, whatever. And then like a month later, I got it. And even though that's like not anything that crazy, that moment meant a lot to me. Of I was very close to giving up. And then when you get it, it's so much better. And that feeling is what pushes me in bodybuilding. Those moments where you're like, there's no way I could do this, or like I could get to this point, or whatever. But you just keep pushing that, and you just keep going farther than you even expected to. And that's the coolest part, is going beyond the points that like you really ever thought that you would. And it just gets better. It does.
Like in skateboarding and stuff, they kind of say the same thing. It's like you can literally fall on your face like a million times in a row, and then that one time you do it, and you don't know the difference between like that, that millionth time and the time before, but like it works out, and you get it, and and from then on out, it's just like it becomes natural. It's so weird how, you know,
100%.
sticking with
Yeah.
something, it almost seems like it's that way in everything, though. It's like, wow, I can't even imagine a time before I was, capable of doing this, but it just seems like it's part of
Yeah.
me now. But
That's It's absolutely, it's a part of everything we do. I mean, there are times when, like, you know, if I ever start to self-doubt about anything, about what it is that I want to do in my career, what it is I want to do in bodybuilding, I think about like when I first started driving and how terrifying it was. I remember I was driving, I learned how to drive on my dad's like huge pickup truck. It was like a double wide. That thing was massive. If you're making a turn, like you got to make it wide because it was really big. And I remember when the first couple times driving, I mean, my hands were shaking. I couldn't get myself to like properly, you know, steer the wheel to like get it to go straight. I'd either go too left or too right. And then now it's like, you know, when you drive, I mean, you could be driving and eating a sandwich and you're like, whatever, like, you know, you don't even care. But it's like, that's with any skill in life. Whenever you first start, it feels really unnatural. You know, you think there's no way I'm ever going to get comfortable with this. But like, that's the beauty of being a human, is that we can develop so many amazing skills in so many different things, with whatever it is, whether it's a sport or a trade or your job or whatever it is, even your mindset. It's always going to start out where you're like, there's no way I'm going to get this. You're like, I suck. But if you keep at it and you really keep working at it, it really can work out.
I think an interesting kind of like dichotomy is the bodybuilding and the law, because it's probably just me like not knowing enough about it, but it seems like the law side would be almost like the very dry maybe, but then the bodybuilding side, and I get, like I said, maybe it's just because I kind of like know a little bit more about it, it just seems like it's so much more different. Is it the differences almost in the two that are attractive to you, or are there similarities that you kind of can see in both of them?
Yeah, so I think that what has gotten me to the point that I am with bodybuilding and with being in law school and becoming an attorney, they come from the same characteristics that I like about the both. Both of them push me to be better every single day. Both of them are giving me a platform to be able to work harder than I ever really thought that I could. But for something that is so much greater than anything that I really thought I could do. I mean, I started with bodybuilding. Like I said, I did my first show when I was 16. And that was before I even knew I was going to be going into law school. Whenever I started school, I actually thought I was going to be a doctor, and I was majoring in biology. And that didn't take very long before I realized I don't like this at all. I hated science. I realized it just wasn't going to work. And at the time, I was like, well, I didn't really have anything else planned. I didn't really have any other, you know, things that I was thinking about. But my best friend was in her senior year of school, and she was applying to go to law school. And the more that I talked with her and the more that I did research on it, the more that I realized, I was like, I think this is really what I want to do. I started to get really passionate about not just the law, but like litigation and just so many different avenues that you can take with it. And I realized this is another platform that will make me not only work harder, but I'll come out on the other end of it a completely different person. And that's what I've loved so much about bodybuilding, because every time I go into a prep, I know 100% when I finish it, I'm going to be a different person than when I started it. And that has always been the case. I've gone through like, you know, 5 or 6 different preps, you know, at this point. And each time it's so difficult. You reach a point where you're like, I don't remember it this being this hard, you know, the last time around, or, you know, there's different things that pop up that make it harder. But every single time I finished, I've always felt a better version of myself. Either it makes you have to work through something that maybe you weren't ready to work through, you know, things come to light in a bodybuilding prep. You don't realize because it breaks you down. And usually there's a lot of emotional, you know, sides of it that you have to work through. And I think that that's what attracts me so much to both aspects that I have in my life, because it's been very true in law school too. I mean, I'm in my first year, and I did my first semester of law school while prepping for the biggest national show of the year last year. I had my finals like 2 weeks before the show. And I knew when I was going into it, I was like, this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it was. But finishing it, I'm so happy I did it, because it really made me realize, okay, this is that next step of what you're capable of. Like, you thought that you were only this strong, but it turns out you're actually a lot stronger because you made it through that. And I think that I thrive in those types of circumstances when I know on the other end, I'm going to come out better. So that's why I'm so attracted, not just to my career, but with bodybuilding, and having the two of them, one strengthens the other. I'm constantly being pushed in both. And I think that it's giving me a much more well-rounded, experience. I'm able to be, a lot more balanced in the two of them. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned that well-rounded there, and I think that's an important aspect too, is like having something, not necessarily as like a distraction, but as like a just something else
It's a
to.
different challenge. It challenges you in a different way. And I really have liked that because, like, going to school, now when I started, the people that I'm around, you know, incredibly smart people. I've made a lot of friends in school and they're really smart and they push me in a different way that I can't be pushed, in bodybuilding. It makes you, you can go through bodybuilding and be like, I'm doing so great. I've got all these great things going for me. I can do this, that, and the other. And then you get thrown into a whole different experience and you're like, oh man, maybe, I mean, you can't be perfect at everything, but it just gives you a whole nother area of your life to work on yourself for. And it's done that for me. I'm like, oh man, all right, I really got to step my game up because, these other people, they're not playing around.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting to like almost you kind of mentioned it there, but like it's pushing your limits and finding out like, oh, this is what I'm capable of. It's something that so many people don't ever like. Once you hit a certain age, like you're out of school, you're done with, a lot of challenging things, and you never like push yourself again. And I think having something in your life, whether it be, a hobby or, bodybuilding or whatever it is, like it's so like you said again, like breaks it down into like into becoming almost like a mirror for yourself. Like, okay, it lets you critique yourself, lets you show you what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you could be better at. And I think like I said, so many people just aren't involved in anything that pushes them. And I think
I
it's
agree,
not.
especially as you get to the point of like being in your, I'd say early 20s throughout, because I feel like from what I've experienced, I grew up in a small town in South Mississippi. I grew up on the coast, and I realized, from growing up, being very athletic, having all of these goals, like I was doing competitions when I was in high school and seeing a lot of people, some of my peers who they pushed themselves, whether they played football, baseball, whether they were a cheerleader, whatever. They had things that were keeping them in a routine, in a schedule that were really pushing them and, forcing them to like make goals for themselves to achieve. And they were becoming better people through it. That's why it's like, I think it's so important to have your kids involved in something extracurricular to like kind of get that ball rolling. But I feel like after college, maybe if they make it into playing sports or something in college, after that, they don't really find anything else that is pushing them in that way. Most of them go on to, get a job, have a family. A lot of people my age are already, getting married and having babies, and that's great. They're having, I'm so excited for them. They're living their lives. But noticing that pattern of kind of how your life goes, after college, having kids, having family, people get really stagnant and just kind of comfortable. They find a house, they find a spouse, they find their job, they do their thing, they're in their groove, right? And they're not really being challenged outside of their family, outside of being a parent, or an employer. And unless they're in a really high stakes career where they're like fighting for promotions and, trying to achieve all of these things in their career, it's human nature. You're going to get comfortable. And with that comfortability comes, you kind of just peak at that point and you don't really find, okay, what else is underneath the surface? Like, what else can I achieve? What else can I push myself through? And learning, the biggest thing is you just learn so much about who you are and you really find a lot of yourself in those goals that you're trying to achieve. And so when you take the goals out of the equation, that's why a lot of people, I feel like, get really lost, or maybe they start to drink or do drugs, or, you know, whatever that fix becomes because they've gotten comfortable. I feel like a lot of that is associated with them not finding their identity anymore in pushing themselves for some goal, trying to achieve something. And that's why I just feel so lucky that, like, I found bodybuilding at such a young age, because it not only instilled those key characteristics that, you know, make up who I am now, but I get to carry that with me through the rest of my life. I mean, I don't intend on stopping anytime soon, whether it's with bodybuilding or even as an attorney. That's a career that I can continuously work and push and become better and better in whatever area of law I'm practicing in. And I knew that that was something I wanted in a job, because I knew, I was like, I cannot sit with the same title, getting the same pay at the same place for the next, you know, 40 years of my life. I was like, I have to have that. I have to have something that's pushing me to keep, you know, becoming better, essentially.
Right. No, yeah, I think that's a good point. And you kind of mentioned it there, but like what did push you into bodybuilding? Like why did you decide to get into it?
So I was 16. I'd been working out, lifting weights for a couple years at that point. I started lifting weights when I was like 12. My mom got me a gym membership because I was like, I really want to work out. I was always really drawn to, you know, being an athlete. Both of my parents were really athletic. They took excellent care of themselves and we ate pretty healthy. So I started working out then, kind of learned the basics of it. And then by the time I was like a freshman in high school, I really started getting serious with lifting. That's when I started like working out with a couple of my guy friends and, you know, squatting, deadlifting, you know, learning the basics of it. And then when I was 16, I was at my gym. That was like a pretty much a bodybuilder gym that was in South Mississippi. And a guy approached me who's a bodybuilder and was like, hey, have you ever thought about competing? You have, you know, really good muscle development. Have you ever considered it? And I was like, I didn't even know that I could as a minor. I thought, you know, I thought you had to be like 18 or something. And they're like, no, you can do a teen division. I was like, oh, that would be really exciting. I didn't know anything about it. I knew that you were really muscular and then you would get really lean and, you know, you'd wear a suit and you got on stage. That's pretty much the basics of it. But I was like, I want to do it. So I started it the beginning of that year in like January. And then I got a coach and I competed that September. And then from then on, I just kept going. I mean, it was funny because it's like, it was before, you know, now with bodybuilding, with the social media, it is huge. You know, people can get involved in this sport so easily versus at the time, you know, everybody who was competing at that gym was like 35 and older. Like they were all, you know, they were all adults. You know, I was just a kid and none of my friends understood it. People at school were like, you're going to do what? Like, you're going to lift weights and like eat chicken all the time and just like get up on a stage. And I was like, yeah, it seems really cool to me. And the more I learned about it and the more I got involved with it, I realized I was like, this is what I'm like meant to do, like in my life. And I'm so grateful that I got to have that opportunity at such a young age because I just love it.
Yeah. Did you have any, you kind of mentioned a little bit of like the questions, but did you have any pushback from like family or friends about starting it?
So my family, I'm so blessed. They were so supportive. You know, my parents have always been like my biggest cheerleaders, and I'm so grateful for that. Anything I've ever wanted to do or start, they're like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. And then they like, my mom still to this day comes with me to all of my shows. I'm so blessed. So no pushback from my immediate family. From like I remember like my Grammy and my aunts were like, oh, that's interesting. Like they were kind of confused about it, but they were like, but that sounds fun. Like, you know, have a good time. And then my close friends at school, they understood it pretty quickly. I mean, they didn't understand as far as like the food and everything went, but they did not push back on me at all. Now, all the rest of the kids at school, totally different story. I caught a lot of heat. There were a lot of people who made fun of me and they, you know, because I'd carry around my water jug at school and I would put my BCAAs in it. So it was all blue. And the running joke was like, oh, is Hailey drinking that toilet water? Because it was like blue, like from after like cleaning a toilet. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And you know, I had a couple of guys in my class at one point, they would steal my lunchbox because it had all of my meals in it for the day. Cause you know, I'd pack it at the beginning of the morning and have them throughout the day. I remember one guy taking it and they were just poking fun at me, but they took it and they're like, oh, like, are you gonna cry? And I was like, maybe I might. I was like, that's my only food for the day. Please don't take this from me. So they poked fun at me a bit. But it wasn't anything too bad. It was pretty understandable for a group of, you know, 16-year-olds who are like, they don't understand it. So of course they're gonna make fun of it. But
And I guess being 16, like usually that's a time when you're just like, you know, cut loose, party, all this other stuff. Like how did that did you was
yeah,
that something you weren't interested in, or was it just like, okay, I
so
have this goal?
I around the time that I was lifting weights, it was right before I started my first prep. That was the year that I really got into like, oh, we're like gonna party and drink and we think that this is so much fun. And that didn't work out for me very well at that age. I quickly got into a lot of trouble. Um, Nothing crazy, but just like, you know, staying out too late. My mom finds out that we're drinking, I get in trouble, you know, stuff like that. And I think that once I started that prep, I knew like I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna be drinking. And some of my friends were like, you're not gonna go out with us anymore? And I was like, no, not for this amount of time. I was like, I mean, there are other years to drink. I mean, I was like, I'm gonna be just fine. So it really wasn't that big of a deal the first year that I started. Once I was in college, you know, I did a show my sophomore year of college and then again my senior year. And I quickly learned, you know, I definitely like to go out and have a good time. And, you know, I would go to a lot of music festivals and travel a lot. But I realized, you know, when it was game time and when I was getting ready for a show, like that was it. I was completely laser focused on it. And I didn't mind that because I knew that when I was in my off season, like I have a really good balance. I don't deprive myself of going out to dinner and going out and getting drinks or going to music festivals or stuff like that. I was like, I've had my fun and I will continue to have my fun, you know, during another time. So I never felt deprived, like being so young, feeling like I'm missing out on something or missing out on memories. Cause you just have to make it whatever season of life that you're in at that time.
Right. No, I think that's it's like a lot of people have like a really good or maybe maybe bad, but like a balance issue of like they're completely on the program 100% all the time, or it's the other way where it's like you know, they don't do anything ever and they're always having fun, they're always partying. But
Right.
I think that's one of the hardest things though, like whenever you whether you're just getting into it really or not, like is sometimes mentally just being like what kind of like what time is it, you know, because it can change so fast with, you know, with bodybuilding. I think it's cool because you have like these dates, but like outside of that it's almost like, okay, when do I need to be a little bit more disciplined, when can I cut loose a little bit?
Right. And
It's
it's definitely individual. And like, you know, I think I learned towards, you know, I think probably in the last year and a half, 2 years, um, I started to realize, you know, all right, if I have a goal to not just like, it's one thing to just compete, it's another one to compete with an intention of this is what I'm working for, this is what I want to achieve. Like, I got to act like it, you know. It's so true that like if you want to be a pro, you have to act like a pro. And I really made that switch, I would say within the last year and a half, just really with my habits and everything. But, you know, depending on what stage of like fitness you're in, like bodybuilding is an extreme, you know, and if you want to be successful in it, yeah, there's going to be things that you sacrifice, you know. When I'm getting ready for a show, my energy is very limited. You know, I'm not going out, I'm not staying out past like 8:30 because I'm exhausted because I've got training and cardio in the morning. You know, you're making sure if you go somewhere, you pack your food. Obviously, you're not drinking alcohol. And those are things that have become instinctual to me because I've done it so many times at this point. Um, But, you know, for other people, they're like, oh my God, it's so extreme. Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, it's a sport. Like, you know, you don't ask like an NFL player why he's, you know, getting up at 5 a.m. and going and, you know, I don't know what football players do, throw balls outside, something. They run laps or do whatever. They're training. You don't ask them that because it's like, yeah, they're in a sport and they handle themselves like a professional. And it's the exact same way in bodybuilding. But when I'm, you know, when I'm like right now, I'm in my off season, finding back that balance of like, you know, my food is still pretty much the same. You know, obviously it's just a lot more and I have a lot more time because I'm not doing as much cardio. But I still try to keep that similar structure in my life because I still have goals that I'm achieving in my off season. It keeps me just like basically on my shit. Like it just keeps me like in line with everything else. But I do let myself like, you know, I didn't get to go out or do anything really, you know, for the last year pretty much. So whenever I was done, I was like meeting up with my friends and we wanted to go get some drinks and we go out to eat. And like that is balance to me, you know, balance is so different to each individual. But like that's perfect. Like if I can go out, have a couple cocktails or go on a trip and like not be worried about, you know, every single thing that I'm putting into my mouth. I mean, majority of the time I'm still counting my macros and everything, but that gives me enough of the flexibility to where that's happy for me, you know. I don't feel deprived in that at all. But it just depends on the person, you know. There are people who I've met who outside of bodybuilding, they're, you know, they'll compete and then they'll kind of go back into their life afterwards and they become like, it's like called like I don't want to say orthopedic because that's for shoes, but it's like it's something ortho. It's like not anorexic, but it's someone who is so obsessively controlling about what they're putting into their mouth, and you know they have zero balance. They don't, you know, if they eat even a bite of a cookie, they freak out. And I had a friend of mine who was dealing with that after coming out of a show, and that was the biggest thing that she struggled with was like, how do I essentially fix my brain into allowing me to have that balance again and to gain weight and to go through all of those things. So it can be either way. I mean, if you're extreme in something, it's difficult sometimes to allow other variables into it without, you know, feeling like, oh my God, I'm gonna fail at everything. So
You kind of did mention there was kind of flipping the switch to taking it into that next level. You know, I'm gonna be a, you know, professional in this. I'm going to act like a professional. So, what? Tell us a little bit about like what that specifically means for you.
sure. So I feel like the moment that I really flipped that switch for myself and I noticed just everything changed was the beginning of this year of 2021. I was getting ready for a show that I did in April. It's called The Clash in Orlando. And I just joined this new team. I was really excited about, you know, I hadn't stepped on stage in like 2 years. And I was really excited for, you know, what I could do in this year. I didn't really have a lot of high expectations. I knew I wanted to do my first national show and I wanted to place top 10. And that was it. I mean, I've had the dream of going pro since like I started, but I didn't think that I was even gonna like really get close to it this year. I didn't really have it in my mind. And as I was prepping for this show, I was studying for the LSAT, you know, getting ready. I was finishing all my classes in college. I was getting ready to be moving in law school. And I think once I started to see, I'd been so diligent in everything I was doing. I just felt on like something just felt so good about this prep, about this season, about this year. And I was so excited. And I was like, I am going to do every single thing that I can to get myself to where I need to be. I want to push myself as hard as I can because in preps that I'd had before when I was like a kid, I wasn't perfect. You know, my mindset was still of an amateur. I hadn't switched it, you know, to a pro yet. And with that just came maturity. But in that year, when I really started to see how good I was becoming and the potential that I had, probably like around the time of like February or March, the more progress that I was seeing, not just like physically in myself, but like in my vision of what I wanted this year, it just lit my fire in a way that I hadn't experienced before. I found an even deeper passion for this sport, because I realized I was like, oh, this is like who I can actually become. Like, if I really have this vision for myself, this can really become my reality. And I just started I put 100% into everything, into every single workout, into every single cardio session. And I just fell in love really with the work. I mean, I feel like what made that difference from like having an amateur mindset and a pro mindset was when I was an amateur, like, I mean, I'm still an amateur, but like in that mindset when I was a kid, I didn't always feel, super excited to have to like do my cardio, or like there were times where I was like, oh, I don't want to fucking eat this chicken. Like I was over it, but it's because I was a kid, but I kept with it. And then throughout this last year, that's when I realized like, no, this is like becoming who I am. I wanted to eat everything accordingly. I wanted to get enough sleep. I wanted to put 110% into my posing, into my cardio. I wanted to study the sport as much as I could because I knew that this is who I could become, like this vision I had. And the closer I would get to it, the more I would want it. Cause I'm like, okay, this could actually happen. So things just kind of picked up even faster than I really expected in this year. I'm so grateful. I got second at that show at the Clash. I then went on to do Junior USA's in May. And then I finished out with nationals in December. And I just got so immersed in the community, and I started to get really connected with a lot of, like higher up pros, and getting to like learn from them, and hearing their feedback. And it's been really incredible. I think that once I started to see like, becoming such close friends with people that I used to look up to, that I still look up to, but like pros in this sport, I started to realize like I know my potential, and what I can really do in this sport. And it's where I feel the most alive. So I think that when you really start to like get that passion and that feeling of like, it's one thing to have the passion for it. It's another thing to see it becoming reality, that when those two go together, it's like you can't be stopped. I mean, it's like you're having a manic episode and you're just like, I just want to keep going. So that really happened for me this year. And I'm really doing my best to make sure that, although sometimes that like, there's so much excitement that goes behind it, but in those moments where like you maybe don't feel as on fire for something at the time, still making sure that I hold on to that groove of, don't slow down, if anything, speed up, like keep going. Cause it's really easy once you're out of it for a little bit to kind of like get comfortable and lose a bit of that speed.
Yeah. Have you ever read anything by Tim Grover?
No, but I want to read that book. It's called Winning, with the
Yeah.
one as the I. I want to read that, but I haven't.
Really good. If you like audiobooks too, it's him. He does the voiceover thing. And I think whenever you really find something like that you're passionate about, it becomes like fun, almost as like it's fun, but it's almost not even like that. It's more of like optimization of like a feeling. It's so weird because you do want to like you get excited about the most weird things that most people looking, from the outside looking in, it's like, why are you so passionate about eating this certain meal? It's like, this is just another meal, but like, what that meal can do for you. You know what each rep can do. Like it's a different feeling whenever you're passionate.
100%. And I mean, obviously when you start out with something like this, if you don't have the passion for it, like it's not going to last, no matter what it is in life. But I think that one of the biggest things is, utilizing that passion and talking about it, whatever it is that you're passionate about in anything in life, talk about it as much as you can, because that high that you get when you're like, I remember there was one time I was like getting my hair done, and my hairdresser was asking me about, oh, like, so I saw that you compete, blah, blah, blah. And I just started rambling about competing, and he was just so interested, and he's like, I can just tell that you're so passionate about it. And it's because when someone's passionate about something and they're talking about it, it's like they light up, their energy just becomes so like almost intoxicating, like because it becomes so overwhelming and people can really feel that. And that's when you really know like you're on the right track. If you're talking about something and you're just, your face is lighting up and you're so excited about it and you just want to talk to anybody about it who will listen, like stick with whatever that is, because it's so special to feel that way about something. But also understand that like there are going to be days where motivation or whatever you want to call it, it's not going to be there. Okay. You're not going to be that excited because that's life. There are a lot of times where, you know, I mean, majority of the time, I do love the work, and whether I want to or not, I still make sure to get it done. But do I wake up every day where I'm super excited to like go to the gym? Some days, no. Some days, especially when I was in prep, there are days where I'm like, do I really want to do like hours of cardio today? Not really, but you you just have to do it. And then as you keep going, I mean, there are plenty of times where I would have cardio sessions where I'm like, I'm so excited. You know, I'd use that time to like really visualize and I would just really get myself amped up. So like utilize your passion as much as you can in those moments where you feel it. But there are going to be times where like you're tired. And if you expect yourself to always feel like excited about it at all the time basically, and if you start to think like, oh no, I'm not excited about it right now, so then that means I shouldn't do it, it's like, no, there are going to be times where you gotta, that discipline's got to come in, you know.
Definitely. No, I think that's a big difference between people who are, who take that next step in anything is like when you wake up in the morning, you just do like you almost become robotic about like your actions because it's your brain is it's so smart, it takes what you want in the long term and it makes it seem so far away, and then it makes your bed that's so warm and so cozy, it makes it seem like the most rewarding thing if you just close your eyes.
Right, no, I agree, yeah. And I think that becoming successful in anything, I mean, obviously a lot of it has to do with the habits you form, your mindset, how you spend your time, all of that. And in building those habits, you just kind of have to, I feel like the more that you learn about how your brain works and like how habits are formed, it really teaches you about essentially where you are now and how you got to where you are now versus where you want to be. And a lot of it, I mean, people just overlook the details so much. They think, oh, if I could just, eat 1,000 calories a day and like go running for 10 miles every day, my whole life would be better and different. And it's like, okay, well, you're looking at it at a very wide perspective. Like you got to really get in deep on, okay, well, why do I not want to work out? Is it because, I'm stressed out at my job and I would rather stay home and, feed that emotion with like having food or having a drink or, doing something else that isn't a healthy habit? Like there's reasons why we do the things that we do and why we form the habits that we have. It's like, get really introspective on it because you're going to find a lot more success in changing those habits than you are of like, saying, okay, well, I'm just only going to eat healthy food all the time. And that's just going to be how it's going to work. It's like, no, that's not going to last. I just in this last couple of months, I started doing like one-on-one lifestyle coaching, and it's taught me a lot just in helping people who, I've got a couple girls who are athletic and who've been working out and they just needed more guidance on that. And then I have people who like have no idea, they've never, they don't have a regular workout routine, they don't really understand how to track macros, how to just like look at food and like know what you're looking at, whether it's carbs and fats and protein and whatever. So, starting with people from, scratch essentially, and being like, okay, we're about to do something that a lot of people tried to do and failed to do because they can't make it stick. So, I try to be as detail oriented as possible with these people and really work on, it's like, okay, we got to build habits. Like I'm not going to just throw you into the gym and not give you any guidance on food and just like expect it to work, because it will not at all. You just have to learn a lot about how to build those habits and how to make them stick. And it's really not easy. I mean, that's the reason why like dieting culture and, the dieting market is like a multi-billion-dollar industry for that reason, because people have a very difficult time at, setting goals and then like sticking with them. But I love to read so much. And from a pretty young age, I started reading a lot of self-help books that really shaped the way that I go about like my own mindset and talking to other people about their mindset. The first one that I read that I really loved was called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Excellent book. Absolutely amazing book that really teaches you all the basics of, you know, manifestation and like how we attract things into our life, whether we intend to or not, and how those things can become like an endless loop in your life. And I started reading that when I was like 17. And I think from learning a lot of things like that, continuing to educate myself on it, even with YouTube and audiobooks, there's so much information out there. But if you're going out and seeking it out, I've been able to apply that, you know, to my own mindset in my life, but being able to help other people apply it to theirs. And it's not even like, I mean, fitness and health is like one very small aspect that it can be applied to, but like think about someone's life of them growing up. They didn't really learn a lot about, you know, being introspective of like their thoughts and their behaviors and their feelings and why do I react the way that I do when something like this happens, and maybe I have some trauma that like I'm not dealing with. Like there are a lot of people who don't even think about those things, and then they grow up, they get married, they have kids, and then they get into some situation in their life where either they realize that they're not happy, or you know they have all these problems that are kind of arising out of them, or around them, that they don't know how to deal with. And it's because they weren't given any education on how to handle something like this. You know, whether it's looking inward to yourself and saying, you know, how did I get here? What are some characteristics about myself that maybe I don't love and that I would like to work on and change? And I think that those self-help books and like constantly just trying to educate yourself and be better, it's all so helpful because it makes you look inward instead of outward and say, okay, I'm able to fix a lot of these problems that are going on in my life. I just got to figure out how. And that's something that like if you can master that, of being able to master like your own mind, and I mean if you master your mind, you literally can change everything in your life. And I feel like there are not enough people in this world who have the resources, I guess, around them to be able to, you know, tap into that.
Yeah. No, I think being very introverted myself, I think almost got forced into that kind of like thinking a lot and like thinking about myself and like just different moments. Like I feel like almost to have a, you know, like a third person dialogue going on at all times. And
Yeah, I
it's
can
much.
relate to that a lot. I'm very I don't know. I'm introverted in the sense that like I love to be at home, you know, I love to, you know, spend time with myself and just like have, you know, chill nights. That's perfectly good with me. But I'm very extroverted in that I'm very outgoing. I can make friends with pretty much anybody that I meet. I'm not shy in any way. Um, but from growing up, being, you know, liking being by myself, and just spending time alone, I love that time because I've learned so much about myself in that, you know. You'll, and I don't know, you just get to know yourself so well about, you know, what do I want in this life? You know, who do I want to become? What do I want to leave here when I'm gone? You know, these are a lot of things that like, I mean, some people really don't think about that often. And I'm grateful that in my life, through every stage that I've been through, I've been constantly kind of picking at that of like, okay, well, like, what can I change about this? Or like, you know, maybe I don't really love the way that I've been, you know, handling situations lately. Let's fix that. How can I fix that? Who, you know, who can I become? And I mean, you really don't get to have that if you're constantly like, say you've been in a relationship like since you were really young, and you know, you don't really think about anybody but that person. Like you don't have a lot of that time to really develop and like really think about all of those things. So I think that that's so essential for any person. It's like spend those like, you know, early years of your life really getting to know yourself and figuring out what you like and what you don't like and who you want to be and who you don't want to be. um, because I mean there's so many people who miss out on those really vital years, and then they grow up and they realize they're like there's a lot of things that they didn't even get to figure out about themselves or get to like go out and achieve because they didn't even really know what they wanted.
Yeah. No, I think, and it becomes even harder too, to, like with technology, you know, we're all constantly like on social media and looking at other people's lives, even if we're alone in bed or, just to a certain degree, like TV also like is another distraction, but like seeing real people, knowing that that's a real person, and you follow people, literally you're following people like with their daily activities, and it doesn't give you much time to think about your own stuff. And even whenever, you post something on social media, it's almost like, how can I become, what people will like literally like, like a picture, like a video, like how can I become this thing?
Yeah.
So I think
You
it
start
just
to chase,
become,
yeah, you start to chase that outward validation that's all outside of yourself, basically. You're looking outward and not inward. I'm pretty lucky to where I've kind of experienced both sides of it. I've experienced really good aspects of social media and I've experienced really not good aspects of social media. But I feel like a lot more people have been speaking up about how social media affects their mental health and how they view themselves and how, everyone's trying so hard to paint this perfect picture of like who they are because, everyone's looking, like whether it's your people you went to high school with, whether it's your ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend, everybody's eyes are on you. And so you feel this need to paint this picture of who you are. And a lot of the times it's very not authentic. And I think something that I didn't really feel this way until I would say the last like year or so. Um, Being now, the more that I've been posting, I've been very lucky with my social media. I don't have any like, I don't have like a crazy number of followers, but the amount of people that I've gotten a lot more recognition within the last year of competing. The more shows I've done, I got a lot of promotion from the first show that I did, The Clash, that I love so much. But they've been so good to me, and I've gotten all this promotion, and with that has come, I've had a lot of new people following me, and as that's gotten higher and the more that I've people, getting more messages and likes and comments and, people who've been reaching out to me, and I get to have really amazing connections with people. But at the same time, I've noticed it has affected my mindset in the sense that, I'm in an off season now and I'm not going to be competing at all this year because my metabolism is honestly not good. And I know what I need to do, to go pro. And that's going to require pretty much taking this year off. And with that comes, I'm not lean, like I'm not, stage lean. And with that, the internet doesn't want to see you when, you're not shredded. Like, I feel like there's so much pressure on especially female competitors. Whenever you're really lean, it's like that's when you do all your photo shoots. That's when, you do all this promotion with other, people, and that's when you're getting all of that validation. And there are a lot of people who literally don't want to gain weight in their off season, mainly because of social media, because they want to stay lean, they want to stay relevant, they want people to still, give them that recognition. And it becomes so dangerous if you're not paying attention to it. And luckily, I started to feel that way in the past like month or so. But I was like, you know what? I don't care. If there are people who don't want to follow me because I'm not shredded right now, I cannot let that affect my health and my well-being. It's like, I'm the one that has to live inside of me every day. I would appreciate to make it, a happy place, So it's like, you have to learn, I'm interested in living my life for me, or I'm interested in living my life for all of these random people on the internet who I don't know and who also kind of probably don't care. Like, so you kind of have to make that decision for yourself. If you have a big presence on social media and maybe your job has to do with that, and in bodybuilding, you really have to really have to check in on yourself a lot and say, okay, am I doing this for me or am I doing this for somebody else? You also have to check in with yourself and say, I know whatever it is that I'm in, whatever industry, job, whatever I'm in, I know what I bring to the table. I know that I have qualities that there are other people might not have. I know that I am like valuable and worthy to be in this position. And that's really what's helped me so much, in not constantly picking myself apart in comparison to these other people, because I do often, I'm always my own worst critic, but I know who I am. I know my heart, and I know that I have something to offer to bodybuilding and as an attorney. Because I mean, I just always think of it as like, you know what? The IFBB doesn't have an Hailey Hester, and there is only one Hailey Hester. So I know that like I have something to offer, I have something to bring. And I think that that's really important in no matter what it is you're doing. You have to really like, if you're not someone who is very confident, or maybe you're not like as comfortable, like, you know, talking about the qualities of yourself that you like. I'm very comfortable with doing that. Maybe that's narcissistic, but there's some people who like literally, if you asked them, what's something you like about yourself? They'd be like, I don't know, like they wouldn't know what to say. So if you're not comfortable with that, you really need to write down a very real list of why am I good at what I do? What can I offer? What are the things that I like about myself that I'm good at this? And you really have to drill that list into your head to remember, you know, who you are and why it's important that you're here. Because if you don't and you lose your identity in this, it's so easy to say, you know what? I can't do this. You know, there are other better people who are more qualified to do whatever it is. And then you just give up. And it's like, I mean, imagine if Michael Jordan would have done that.
Right.
He wasn't thinking about that. Like he was like, I got to be the best. Like I deserve to be here. And you have to have that level of confidence to become successful. Because if not, you know, you'll self-doubt and you'll basically self-sabotage yourself out of even being able to get it.
You know, we talked about really bodybuilding and stuff like that, but when it comes to competing, I think it almost is it's a transformative adventure because it it's this culmination of all this effort into one event. And it's almost like, wow, there's so much pressure here, but there's the opportunity and there's all this cool stuff going into it. With that being said, what do you feel like you've learned about yourself from competing?
Oh my God, so many things. Yeah, bodybuilding has honestly become like the foundation of like my character in every way. I think probably the biggest thing that it's given me is the way that I've learned about myself in like what I really want and how passionate I am about things. And I'm very passionate about just so many things in life. But I really realized, you know, what I'm capable of. I mean, I was always a very confident kid. You know, but in anything that I did, there were a lot of times where I was confident to a limit, you know, as most people are. And that was really, you know, present as I started competing because, you know, I was like muscular, but not anything crazy. And, you know, you see these pros at the time, and this was even in 2016 when like bikini pros were lean, but they weren't like anything that it is now. And, you know, you look at these people and you're like, how would that ever be me? Like, you really don't think it is. You're just like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep doing it. We'll see where it takes me. Um, but as I've gotten to that point where like I have exceeded my expectations of what I had set out for me, it's absolutely changed my perspective on what I want really in life. I feel like if I didn't have bodybuilding, I wouldn't be so ambitious in all of the things that I want, because there's so many things that I want just in life in general. And bodybuilding's given me that platform to like really dream. Honestly, it sounds super corny, but it's true. It just gave me an opportunity to say, this is what I want out of life. And there's a lot of things that I want. And I've learned that if I stick with it and I really believe in myself, like even when it's really, really difficult, these can 100% be yours. Like I just kind of went into the mindset of like, if somebody else can achieve this, then like, why not me too? Like I'm just as special as anybody else. So I think that the more that I've, you know, exercised that in my life and achieving these things, it's just made me step into who I am even more. And the best part about it is like, I haven't even turned pro yet. Like, so I still have so much of a ways to go. And I know that where I've been and how much greater it's going to get as I keep going. And like, it's what makes me the most excited, honestly, in life.
Thanks for coming on and sharing.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to be able to be here. And also, like you said, I mean, I think that anything, conversation is one of the most educational and incredible things that like are at our fingertips all the time. Like that's honestly anything that I've learned and that I've become who I am. It's literally through a simple conversation. So people really underestimate it, but it's always a pleasure.
Definitely. And if people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, it's at Hailey Hester _. And yeah, you can follow me on there. I'm kind of interesting sometimes.
Well, it's been, like I said, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming on and sharing, and best of luck.